Hampton, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Pat. How's the podcast going?
It's going great. It's going great. It's we just talked about this off camera. It's been a year and a half ago, I believe, since we last spoke. So a lot of things have happened both in your and my world.
Yeah. Let's cover some of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the podcast is usually I'm the one being interviewed, but
Yeah.
what's happened in your world of podcasting?
Yeah, well, on the podcast I expanded to interviewing more different type of people. So in the beginning it was very much fitness people primarily. I think the podcast has branched into more of an overall self-development podcast. So covering mental health, nutrition, self-development in general. So it's been super fun to talk to a lot of smart people. That's my favorite part about the podcast is just I get educated along with the audience.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I miss about doing a podcast. You really get to meet some really cool people that I honestly I kept friendships with for a while. So like when I start doing a podcast again, that's really what I'll look forward to is, I'll be able to talk with someone sometimes weekly, right? Every other week. And it's just really nice to meet some really cool people. And a lot of them are very friendly and they link up with you and they help you and you help each other. So it's very nice. I'm happy that's happening.
Why'd you stop your podcast?
Well, I mean, it's a time game for me right now. It's not stopped. It's just, I haven't done as many as I used to. It's whenever we have one pop up. And there was also like I used to do it on my YouTube channel, and I used to live stream it on my YouTube channel actually, and it changes a little bit as the channel has grown, and it didn't quite fit thematically, but so I just need to reorganize it a little bit. I think target it towards people. Not to say that I won't still talk to who I want to talk to, but maybe I can find like some Venn diagram overlap of something the audience might respond more to. Right? So like sometimes I might want to talk to some like a small business owner that I met the other day at a coffee shop locally, but they don't quite know who that is, right? Which is it's fine, but like I want to learn about their knowledge, running a coffee shop or whatever they're doing in town. But perhaps I can find something not necessarily for people of notoriety, but maybe just people with a little more relevance that can bring more benefit to the audience. Just some overlay. So that's something I'm still learning to balance a little bit. I also have my podcast is really called Coffee with Hampton, where I talk with myself usually. Right. So it's nice, and I think we're gonna branch off to like there's like a mental health or just like general discussion lifestyle one on a separate channel, but the ones that are related to health and fitness I do keep on the main channel.
Right. For those who may not be fully aware of who you are, we already kind of covered a lot of what you do, but is there something people should know about you before we get into this?
Not really. I just do, my name's Hampton. My channel is Hybrid Calisthenics. I do health and fitness content, among other things.
Okay, really quickly, I'm super sorry to interrupt this episode of the podcast with Hybrid Calisthenics. If you're enjoying it so far, I hope you are. Please consider hitting that subscribe button. It is almost effortless for you to do. It takes less than 3 seconds literally to subscribe, and it's free. It's also risk-free. There's no risk associated to being subscribed. The worst that can happen is literally you will watch a couple of these episodes, have a good time, and that's it. That's the worst that can happen. You'll have a good time. Maybe you'll learn something. So hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the episode. I feel like your content similarly kind of branched from doing primarily fitness also into more self-development in general and mental health, right?
Yeah, it's funny. Every once in a while, if I pop up in a space that isn't, my own channel somewhere, someone else posts about it. And if there happens to be a long discussion thread, someone usually says, "Well, I missed when he only did fitness content," but that never existed. My second video was about like religion or something. It wasn't pushing religion, but it was analyzing how religion can fit into how fitness can be a religious or a spiritual endeavor, or really like honestly self-development as a whole. I would say could fit into a spiritual endeavor because you're working on yourself, and working on yourself is one of the ways you can help other people, because you can try to force something down someone's throat, or that you can lead through example, and then someone sees you and they're like, "Huh, that's actually a pretty cool way to be. How can I be more like this? And then you say, well, let me show you. Right, which is a lot more open-minded than if you're trying to force an MLM down their throat, knocking on their doors.
Yeah.
Right, and not to say that isn't like a good way or the right way to preach the gospel, whether your gospel is religious or otherwise. But I'm saying people are a little more open-minded when they ask. So that's what I was talking about. But yeah, it's definitely a branch into other things, and it's never been a choice for me, and I think that's part of the byproduct of me starting to do that early on, where it wasn't only about fitness content early on. So I never had to make a conscious decision like, oh no, this one's going to be about, about discipline. I don't know if people are going to respond. Like right now, I would do one about like willpower or something, willpower. And that, and it wouldn't really bother me. And like, it might not get as many views. But it's interesting. People respond to different things, not necessarily just purely fitness focused. So yeah, I like to branch out.
What do you mean you didn't have a choice?
What do you mean I didn't have a choice? Did I say that?
Yeah. You didn't have a choice to start posting something else.
Oh, okay. So what I meant was that there wasn't a choice, a conscious decision for me where I would have to make a choice. Okay. It started off that way early on, so I didn't have to make a conscious decision, be like, now I'll start branching out. And for some people, that can be a very nerve-wracking choice. But for me, it was always that way from the beginning, so I didn't have to consciously choose that.
Makes sense. Okay. Yeah, I feel like what I thought you meant was that because you think a lot about your audience, which is just amazing, is what I really look up to in you. So you always ask, what do people want to see of you, which is a great mindset to have. So I thought perhaps that was how it branched off into that, because that was what people wanted to see more of.
Well, see, that's a really interesting point, because I used to say that every new 100K subscribers, especially like sub 1 million, every time 100K, 200K, what would you like? Because I figured that would change. And that does have a lot of value, and I might still do that if I had to redo it. But something that you learn doing it for a while now, but like, by the way, that's why by content creator standards, where like 6 months can seem like a really long time. So like, having done it a little bit longer than I have, I now think that while I do still ask what people want, I try to balance that with an insight of what I think they want. Because sometimes people aren't completely sure. So we're building a fitness app right now. So we have the Hybrid Fitness Routine, which is our free fitness routine. And I don't know. So it has been a while since we talked, since I think maybe the last time we discussed that, I didn't have the structured version of it that there is now. But we're building an app. And so it's a fitness routine we put on the website. And when I asked, if you want an app version for this, what would you like? And they just said, well, we want the fitness routine in an app. Well, your mobile phone browser can do that. It's mobile optimized, right? So in my opinion, that is something people said they want, but if they got it, they might be a little bit underwhelmed as to what it is. So I think you have to build it first. You have to build something first and then ask smaller things of how can I change this? Like, for example, most people, just by nature of what a hit song is, if you show them a hit song, a lot more people will say, I like this song. And then you show them a good song that's not a hit song. They'll be like, I don't like that one as much, right? And that makes sense because the hit song has more people that like it.
Right.
Right. Usually, yeah.
Yeah.
But some people can identify something that they like, but most people can't just write a hit song. So, right. So if you ask your listeners, like, what would you like in a hit song? They're like, oh, well, I want repetitive beats, words that rhyme, like inspiring words, so they kind of get it, but you have to build it first and then get feedback on your thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. It makes lots of sense.
Yeah. That's a realization I've been trying to use more, to where I build something that I think people want, and then I use their insight to micro-correct.
You think a lot in terms of business, going about everything, I feel like. Going about the YouTube channel, going about things you put out, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a major passion of mine to have an ethical business that can serve people.
Yeah, that's super cool, man. So yeah, you mentioned that you wanted to talk to more business owners as well to expand your skill sets on on your podcast, for example?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I would like to introduce an entrepreneurship side to things, because there are a lot of entrepreneurs that I admire, and I would like to hear more about. And so one of the things so if you look at the mission of hybrid calisthenics, of what I would want to do, you realize there's a lot of foundations to it. So like the slogan itself for a while has been cultivate long-term fitness. But underneath that, a broader umbrella or like a broader foundation might be help people thrive. Right. It's like there's fitness, but there's different ways people can thrive. There's fitness, there's mental thriving, and there's other ways they can thrive. Right. They can have more fun. There's different things like that. But underneath that is I would like people to be free. Right. So it gets simpler the deeper you go. And I think one of the ways people can be free is if they would feel more free if they had a business or a goal, like that's similar to a business, even if it's a nonprofit. So we're not bringing money into it, because that's the downside that I'll touch upon in a bit. But a passion that they have that they can pursue for a living, hopefully, and make money doing it, so they can sustain themselves and their family. And just really push for the rest of their lives, or as long as they want, can really help people thrive. I think that's one of the freedoms that I wish I could impart on more people. But obviously, it's not as systemic or as easy or as simple as like teaching someone to do a push-up. There really is something where you need to have a lot of things in place. But once you have that, and there are certain people who can have that, who are listening to this right now, are like, huh. And they thought of that for the first time, like, maybe I can, eventually leave my job as doing whatever and sell plants for a living or whatever, right? It's like whatever they like. And I do want to touch upon whether we have guests or we have a personal podcast where I'm just talking. I do think you can offer an ethical side of business now, and I say that now because considering the current 2023 culture, where some people, they don't need to hear this part of the podcast at all. They're like, oh, well, that, I don't even know why you're covering this. I already know this. But a lot of people, they have this negative view of business, perhaps not undeserved, but I would say probably deserved in many ways, because there are unethical businesses out there who are trying to exploit. But if you create a business, and if you like any business, and there's like substitute that example into what I'm talking about. So instead of trying to exploit, you can create a business to serve, and like having the ability to generate profit enough to grow your own team, I think is how you can serve at scale, because you can be a very good friend to your friend right now. They like whatever you can do. Let's say you're tremendous at personal training. Okay, cool. Or like you're tremendous life coach, or you're tremendous at gardening. That's cool. But if you want to serve people at scale, and you're not just doing that with 1-to-1, and you want to do like 1 to a billion, then you usually will need a team or a software or something. And just the process of building that, not just the goal. That's the big thing that I think people get, because like if you only think of the goal, it takes forever. If it's a big thing, it's kind of like, man, imagine if your goal was to lose 15 pounds and you had to work for 30 years to do it, right? Very few people do that. It's like half a pound a year, right? So you have to enjoy the process of that, right? So enjoy the process of building the big thing and still work hard. And that in itself can provide a lot of freedom. And that's the freedom some people need. Some people are in good physical condition. They don't need, my push-up or pull-up advice, right? I appreciate they still hang around, but they might not need that, but they might want the freedom of having a passion that they can dedicate their life to.
Yeah, I love putting good ethics into business, and I definitely believe that it's possible. I mean, you're a good example of it. I'm getting into sales. That's a skill that I'm trying to develop at the moment, and similarly, sales has a lot of negative connotations to it as well. But lately, I've consumed a lot of Alex Hormozi. Do you know who that is?
I do know. I make it my business to know at least the people that are trending right now, whether or not you agree with them, right? I want to know about them. No, I listen to a lot of his content. I just want to kind of know, because he's creating a cultural impact, and I want to kind of know what he's about, what he's saying. I don't know quite as much about him as I would in like 6 months, but yeah, like I listen to a lot of podcast business content, so I've been going through the Hormozi world.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, he talks a lot about the best sale, because a lot of people, when they think about salespeople, they think they're annoying, they call you up, they try to manipulate. And while that is certainly true for some people, he claims that the best salespeople actually have lots of empathy for the people they talk to, because they have to understand the person's needs so they can actually help them.
Agreed. In my opinion, one of the foundational sales skills, and this is just me coming up with it right now, but it's something that I ponder a lot, because like we're in this world of like ethical business and ethical sales, and there's a key thing that I think a lot of salespeople, however dedicated they are, like, you know, like think of someone who's like who unironically uses the word grind set on themselves, right? Which is not necessarily bad, but like that brings a certain kind of person to mind. If you are selling someone something that you know or suspect they might not need, benefit from, or want, then you are starting to cross the line into benefiting yourself and not serving them.
Right.
Okay. And I think for me, it is a much more sustainable endeavor and a much more enjoyable endeavor to not cross over that line. Right. And also it's more enjoyable and more efficient, because chances are, if you are someone selling coffee cups, and I'm looking at a coffee cup right now, there are more people that you could potentially talk to that want your coffee cup than you have time for, possibly for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Right. 10 hours a day for the rest of your life. So why are you trying to convince someone that may or may not want it? Right.
That's
so
a good point.
You know, it's just like, yeah, have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening to me out. I really appreciate. I know you don't want this, and I can tell you don't. It won't really benefit you, but other people might. So have a great day. Let me know if your friend wants something. Done. You know, that's it. So yeah, 100%. I agree with that, and I think more and more so there's going to be this line of, see, that stuff makes sense, right? You explain it to someone who's not even really into business, they're like, oh yeah, that does make sense. Yeah. That's how I feel like a lot of the epiphanies I have that shape how I view the world right now, how I've learned, they give me that kind of like illumination where it's not necessarily new knowledge. It's something we already kind of know. It's like a hidden part, a darkened part of our stage, and a good educator or a good mentor will shine a light on it. And you're like, oh, that makes so much sense. And I think that's going to start to replace, hopefully, maybe, the image of a salesperson we have in our mind, where their ability isn't to empathize with someone, but to be able to sell them anything. You know, you can sell dirt to a gardener, right? It's like, okay, well, actually, you know, that's not even a great. A gardener probably wouldn't need a lot of dirt, but it's like you sell something to someone regardless of whether or not they need it, but not that, but necessarily where you bond with someone, and from that you know what can best help them. And then if you are, you know, the giga salesman, then perhaps you could create a service that can help them. You know, that is serving people and not forcing down your thing to benefit you.
Yeah, right. So yeah, it does make a lot of sense. But why do you think then that most people just aren't this way, aren't looking to serve others? It seems that way, unfortunately. Well,
I would hesitate to say most. It certainly could appear that way, but you know, I also want to be careful that I don't come across, since I might have already come across this way to some people, where I think like, well, my way is so much better, right? Or like I have the solutions. I don't. This is just a lot of the stuff is just in my mind of what I'm trying to be, and I definitely am trying to serve people and not necessarily try to only take value from them that they otherwise would want, just to benefit myself and not them. So I'll preface it with that, but I would say a big part of it is, one, they don't know. Like I said, this is a darkened part of the stage that's only slowly being illuminated now in the world. But I think it's going to be sticky. It's going to stick with a lot of people because, two, it does make sense, right? And the counterpart to that, or just something to add to that, is you may notice it's more efficient too, right? Like I mentioned, like you're not trying to convince someone they need your thing. They already want your thing. Yeah. You're letting them know, and now you're just telling them details. It's like, oh yeah, here's the payment plan. Here's here's how it shines compared to the competition, and you're honest about that, and it really is better. It's like, oh, this is great, you know. And then it saves time. It's so much more of an easy sale. So that part, I think people don't realize it. And third, I think we could probably go back and forth and discuss where this stems from in culture, but there's kind of an idea that businessmen need to be ruthless. And I think some people who are inspired, especially some younger people, younger guys especially, not to say it's exclusively younger guys, but I see a lot of younger guys as the archetype in my mind, where when they have the call to adventure to be a businessman or a salesperson, it's often already been pitched to them as an alternative to what they were doing before. And it is a little bit of a judgmental ad, but I want to remind people, but it's just kind of like a guy on YouTube or someone in person. It's just like, yeah, well, you're wasting your time working at this coffee shop, working at this grocery store, slaving away your life for someone who doesn't really care about you. Why don't you like call to adventure? You become a salesman. Or like you become an entrepreneur or do this. And that's cool, but it's framed in a way to where it's just like the world has screwed you over, and now it's time for you to be ruthless and screw them over.
Right.
Okay. And I'm gonna. So the idea of being nice and being ethical and caring about others has been seen as like a soft skill that needs to be pushed aside if you want to truly thrive in the world. It's like, Hampton, he's too soft. Like he might have some business success at some point, but that's more so out of luck. If I want to thrive, I have to be ruthless. Is a term a friend of mine used, right? If I have to be ruthless. I have to not care. I have to be so focused. So it's the idea of like, I'm tired of everyone. Now it's time to take. Let me tell you, that is one of the fastest ways to not succeed, in my opinion, for most people, because most people are going to be able to see through that, right? Yeah. Most people don't care that the world has screwed you over. They care in a sense like, I'm sorry, man, but they won't buy from you just because, you're ready to take what's yours. Now that mindset isn't bad if you don't have bad intentions or a bad method. If it's like, I'm tired of slaving this 9 to 5, I want to do my own thing. By the way, if you love your 9 to 5, good for you. No, that's great. There are times in life when I would have really appreciated a 9 to 5. So different things work for different people. It gets bashed a lot, but if that's for you, power to you. There's a lot of security in that. It's nice. And it's repetitive, which is good for some people. You don't have to deal with a new fire to put out every day, right? So there is that idea. And I think most importantly, like I mentioned at the end, it's seen as a soft skill and not something you learn to be better. It's something you learn. It's like, I guess I could be nice, but it's not like an alpha sigma grind set winner thing where you can take this and elevate your skill set. I think that's why. So different dimensions.
Last time you mentioned that you considered perhaps writing a book about giving without expecting anything back in return.
Yeah, man, it's been a while. I'm glad we're doing this. But yes, I have written a book since then. It wasn't about that. And it makes so much more sense than the book I wrote first. It was a book version of the hybrid fitness routine, right? And we're using sales from that to help fund the app version of the hybrid fitness routine. And then we're going to, it's cool. It's one of those things to where, 2023 Hampton could have really shined a light for 2021 Hampton. He'd be like, you're a wizard, right? But it seems obvious now I should have done this, but at the time it really wasn't. And it's one of those things to where I said, because people have been asking me back then to write a book, and I said, do you want it to be about lifestyle or exercise? And they were like, oh, both. Our lifestyle, everything's like, yeah, we can get your exercise stuff on the website. And it's once again, I asked, and they said that, but I think what would they really, by and large, appreciate? And I think it was definitely a fitness one for people who just want fitness, because some people are not there for anything else. And then we can explore different things. That book nowadays, at some point, how to give without expectation. I would still like to do something like that. It might be just because I've talked with a publisher before. They were interested in doing a book, and she was asking me for titles, and I said things like that, and she just seemed a little bit like, I really like those ideas, but they didn't resonate. I think she seemed they were a little generic, and I said, well, she said she wants something that jumps out to people. I said, well, how about how to give everything away for free and still be rich? And they were like, oh, well, I like that.
That's very good.
And I have a book for that. I have a book for that thing. But, I'm still thinking about it, because once again, I don't necessarily want someone to pursue what I'm talking about with only the mindset of being rich, perhaps being free, right? So, but in my opinion, if you are going to become rich, and by the rich, I don't necessarily mean like billionaire level. Once again, this is a lot of stuff where some people have a lot of negative connotation to this, not necessarily undeserved, but there are plenty of people who do well enough and are great people. Like I have seen them myself, so that's what I'm talking about. So like that's why I hesitate to use the word rich. There are some people who do very well and support themselves and their family and their entire team, and as far as I can tell, they're great people. I've talked with them a lot. So that's what I was thinking. I haven't written that book yet. I've really enjoyed writing my previous book. And I had a small team for it that I worked with to design and write it and edit it. And it really was an enjoyable time. I almost want to do one a year, right? I feel like there's enough time in this year for me to do that, or at least draft it. But I feel like some people have just now realized I have an exercise book. I don't know if it's too soon to like push another book out. But from my own creativity standpoint, I would love to do that. I don't know if it'd be that first, or really they could be separate books. See, now you have me thinking, right? How to Give Without Expectation sounds like How to Give Without Expectation sounds like the subtitle of an actual book.
Yeah,
like
it does.
The actual title, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right. It's just like I don't know. Right. I don't know, like Hampton, Infinity War, How to Give Without Expectation.
Yeah.
I don't know,
that's a great title.
Yeah, it's a subtitle, right. So I don't know.
I wonder what it is about writing, because it seems like many people that become successful, they start writing a book on something, whether it be an autobiography. I feel like very many successful people start writing, and I wonder what it is. Many people just seem to really enjoy it. Is it like putting your thoughts actually into something physical, or what is it?
Some people do it as some people use their writing as a lead magnet. So it's like, hey, you ever hear like, hey, I have a book, I can give it to you for free, just pay shipping, something like that. So a lot of people have, especially business people, have realized that content is very important for their business, and their book is a huge form of content. It's a form of content, so that they want people to get it, and then if they have something further down the funnel, a tunnel too, but like a sales call. So like if a business coach might want to give you their book because it might inspire you to buy their coaching. That's $1,000. So rather than $20, some people only have a book, right? So they have, some people buy the book and it's like another stream of income, which I really like. It's one of those things to where I like the idea of like all the stuff I'll say, all the stuff that's in the book or in stuff that I've said somewhere else, but the book is just how it's organized. So if you want it, go in and consume it for free. But if you want it organized, here it is. It's a different option for you. And we'll talk about kind of my rough business model for that, where I can give the most important thing away for free and then offer options through that. But I think one part is they just want something on the side to offer and a different way for people to consume the content. But I think, so it's interesting. There are a lot of people, especially in like the business world, maybe even the fitness world, who have made great accomplishments and have discovered a lot in their sometimes decades of teaching and learning, who didn't necessarily go through a traditional education, higher education course, right? So they, and sometimes, to be fair, there's not always a PhD for something, right? There's not always a PhD for, let's say, bulletproofing, right? That's a common buzzword in fitness. So bulletproofing your shoulders. Like there's not necessarily a course you can take or a path you can take where you would become a PhD and specialize in that. But this is interesting because this is new stuff that I was thinking about the other day, where some people do write books. And you mentioned Alex Hormozi. He said, I think it's time to write a book when you can contribute to the body of knowledge or the existing body of knowledge, right? And I was like, that makes sense. So I think one of the things you're supposed to do as you level up in the academic world is you're supposed to have a thesis. You're supposed to write stuff. You're supposed to do literally, in this case, if you're literally supposed to do your own research. I know that became like a hot topic, but these people are doing their own research by their definition. and do their research, and they create a paper, and then there's like peer review and discussion over it. And I think that's kind of what's happening when someone writes a book. Not necessarily the peer review part, but like over the years and years and years, they don't have a PhD, but there are some people who have PhD level knowledge in whatever skill, right? Just because they've been doing it for so long. I mean, it's hard to substitute like 20 years. And when they start writing books, and like not only experience, but they have talent for it, and they have skills, and they're always learning. So when they write that book, that is them contributing to the body of knowledge. Now, that is their thesis, in my opinion, in the non-academic world thesis. I recognize there are some doctorates who work very hard. I might disagree with that, and I apologize. It's not my intention to offend. I'm just comparing that, right? Does it make sense? Like, once you have so much stuff, you want to share. You know, this is what you've done. You know, it's not scientific method research, but you've learned so much from the world of business, from the world of fitness, from the world of gardening, for going back to that. But then you want to contribute to this. Like, no. Here's a slightly better way that I think some people can benefit from. And sometimes they do. Sometimes these people do change the world. It's wonderful.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. I'm curious. You seem to apologize for your opinion sometimes. Do you worry about getting canceled?
No. But I do think. So that's an interesting point. I don't necessarily apologize for my opinions. I do say sorry because I think there's an idea where if you're confident, you don't have to say sorry. But I never thought that I had to get into a power play with myself if I had the power over myself. Not power over others, but power over myself, right? So I think there's an idea where someone's like, well, I'm unapologetic about my opinion. I'm very confident. I'm very convicted in this. And if someone doesn't agree, screw them, right? Which I think sometimes obscures your message. So I don't try to apologize for it, even though I used the word sorry. I tried to make it more palatable because I do want it to reach people. Like, here's a good example. If I were to talk about spirituality, if I were to talk about religion, or talk about how I pray, that would just by default cancel out like, I don't know, 20, 30%, or like however many, right? Of people who are like, well, that doesn't apply to me, so I'm not listening. All right. But I think if I'm going to take the few seconds or a few minutes or a few hours, as you know, I can give very lengthy answers to answer, then I might as well, if I'm doing it with the intention to help someone, might as well frame it in a way that can help the most people, right? And there are ways outside of their box that would help. So if I would say, I pray, and here are the benefits of prayer, and it doesn't cost me that much to add on. And if you want to think of it in a secular way, if you don't want to be religious, then you can think of it as meditation, right? And like can offer at least similar benefit to that. I would say there is difference. And I think sometimes it is not necessarily the fear of, oh no, so like no one's going to cancel me for, what was the thing I just said? Oh, PhD level stuff. Yeah. I don't think like that's not a risk of being canceled, right? It's not like a reel of someone, using racial slurs for like 5 minutes. That's really more so to save some pointless discussion, right? That's not the point. The point is to compare it to this instead. I think for most people, like who, I think and this is also something I've been thinking about for a while too. The fear and the risk of being canceled for a lot of content creators or public figures is not as great as it may seem to someone in the audience, right? There are some people like in Discord, everyone's like, oh, well, I'm just going to cancel this person. And they're going to be crying. So I know some of these content creators they're talking about, and like the times they've been canceled or there was some negative response to their words, it didn't affect them nearly as much as the audience people think. I was like, oh, this person has lost millions in sponsorships. It really hasn't. Like their top line revenue stayed the same, their views stayed the same. But I think for some people, the fear of that is really more so, let's say you're a gaming creator, right? And you're a good one. You're here to bring joy to people. And you work like 10, 20 hours to make like a 10-minute video that people enjoy, right? And you're doing, oh, it's gonna be funny, it's gonna be inspiring, it's gonna have like good morals, it's great. And then someone's like, well, I don't like this game you played. Whereas I think this character is like a racial caricature, and you didn't even think of that. if you are someone who is there to help and you're someone who is there to bring joy, and you just spent 20, 30 hours like grinding away, losing sleep on this, and you're like, whew, the reason you tend to apologize is because you're there to bring joy. You're not there to create controversy, right? Some people are, in politics, they're there to create controversy. That's okay. But this person there isn't necessarily there to create controversy. That's why there's more of like, hey, I'm sorry about this. We'll delete it, because like you don't want to spend so much time working to ruin someone's day, even though you could argue it's that person's fault for letting it ruin their day, right? But you know, they don't want that. So I think sometimes, with some exception, you know, obviously right now there are some people with, like, you know, unfortunately sexual allegations, some very serious things, but the standard risk of being canceled, we tend to see the biggest cases as an audience. And I'm like, this us, like in general, the ones that make like headline news are the really, really, really bad ones. In general, having an opinion people disagree with is not going to get you canceled. I just try to make mine more palatable to other people. But I'm also a long-winded person, right? If you ever see me write like Instagram posts, like the what is it called? The description, you know, not commentary.
The caption?
Is it description? Yeah, the caption. Right. For me, the caption doesn't even apply, because it's like sometimes it's an essay. I max it out. It's like, oh no, like you run the character limit. I'm like, oh man, but I wanted to add more. But and it's funny. It's like a 20-second video, right? That I have put more words in the caption than I actually used in the video, right? But I want to give context to it. So that is just like a idiosyncrasy of Hampton.
I spoke to Jack O'Shea, who's a TikToker who does pretty offensive, I suppose, sketch comedy videos, and about cancel culture as well. And it seems like we spoke about, or he felt like cancel culture wasn't real as long as you hadn't actually done something wrong. Because you choose when you're canceled. If you stop making content because people are hating on you, then you're canceled. But if you don't stop making content and you continue to make content for those who actually keep enjoying it, then you're not canceled. You can't be canceled.
I think there's a point to that. And I've heard, I didn't hear the actual clip, but I've heard Logan Paul make that claim too, which I totally, I get. I understand that. But I think there's also, you could also find, it's a different interpretation than if you're banned off all social media platforms. Right.
Of course. Yeah.
Right. Which, to be fair, relatively few people have. Right. And now I don't know Jack O'Shea. I don't mean that as like a good or bad way. He might make stuff that I like. I like some.
He's cool.
There are some comedians I follow with some pretty dark comedy. I'm like, that's funny. I would never say that, but that was pretty funny, right? He might not, unless he's really, really, really pushing the edge of that, he might not be at the risk of like truly being like deleted off all social media platforms. And I think there is a value to that. And I kind of want to analyze and push back and play and advocate against myself in this case, where we often talk about cancel culture in a negative light. But I think if we empathize with the people who might not be the most fanatic about it, but who might choose not to watch someone because of something they said, I think they feel like it is their way of balancing out the power that they view that content creators and influencers and these figures have, right? I think we have a natural tendency to want to be like, well, like kind of like democratic, to where it's like we choose where we want, regardless of where you live. I know not everywhere in the world is democracy, but I think there's a natural spirit in the world where we want to choose the people we listen to and the people that reign over us. And if you're a content creator of like 200,000 YouTube subscribers, you kind of feel like, I'm not reigning. Hopefully you don't feel like you're reigning over anyone. But to them, it might feel that way, right? To them, it might feel like that this is a large person and they're saying whatever they want. They have the power. You know, I wish we could do something. And whether or not that's justified, I think that is where some people are coming from, where they feel like, well, this is being forced on us. And like, I want to have the ability to choose not to do this. So I think in its most innocuous form, not innocuous, but in the most pure form, it is a way of social pushback where someone, imagine if you were canceled and nobody made a single bad post. No, nobody made a single bad comment or review on it. They just chose to stop using your service, right? That like, would that be a little bit more palatable? So yeah, I think while there is a negative connotation to it, and while in some cases I really do think it's almost childish and immature, a lot of the cancel culture, I think there does exist a form of it where it might be a little bit valid. And I think I don't necessarily want to be someone who is like, la, 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 this is stupid, that I don't want to listen to you at all, because you might have a point, right? Now, some people, the way they try to cancel you, whether they say it or not, it's like a child throwing a temper tantrum. When it's like literally it's someone's opinion that you disagree with, and you're just like, so when you talk about like me, like saying something not palatable to someone, that's how it seems, okay? Because like I can tolerate it, but sometimes I have a content creator friend who's going through it. I'm like, I don't want to say this about my audience, but these are children. Yeah, these are children. They're such a baby, right? And so there is that. But I also try to find some truth in it and see if I can use it to improve.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. I want to jump into one last topic before we wrap up here. Out of just curiosity, I've never really heard you talk about what you eat. What does your diet look like?
Okay. Cool. That's interesting. And talk about apologizing for my opinions. If you want to go into the meta of that, I give very long-winded answers, so I apologize if you had like 20 questions written down. Like, yep, I'm going to get through 5 of them.
No, it's good, man. It's all good.
Each. And I think I have like a podcast mode where it's like long-form answers go. Right? So, and I think as someone who does short-form content, I often miss the context that I could give in a long-form video. So during long-form videos, I go all out with that.
No, it's great. It's great.
Right. What I eat, I just eat a balanced diet. I know that's one of the most boring answers you could get, but I don't necessarily resonate with like carnivore. I'm not vegan, right? And I've tried those diets at some point, and someone said that these aren't diets; they're lifestyles. I've tried those lifestyles, right? And while I truly can appreciate why, I can appreciate why some people really bond with them, from a food standpoint, they didn't really last on me, right? So like if I were to do something that was like vegan, I'd probably have some chicken or salmon in there, right? Regeneratively, sustainably sourced, but all these, but just like from a food standpoint, if I were to lean more towards carnivore, I would still have probably some rice, some fruit, some veggies.
Because you didn't feel good on just purely carnivore, or just because you had cravings, or?
Honestly, like the times where I did, I never did pure carnivore, I will admit. But then again, you look at the people who did eat pure carnivore and the benefits they have. I can't speak for all of them, but a lot of them had like autoimmune issues and everything. And I don't know if they're pure carnivore forever, right? They like that really helped for whatever reason. They said that all like the inflammation went away, everything, and then eventually they went into more balanced diet. I don't. To my knowledge, I don't have some of those issues, which is why I didn't do that. And once again, disclaimer: I don't know these people that have these autoimmune issues. Like, they said that's what they said, right? You could say it's it's placebo, pseudoscience. It's a little bit controversial still nowadays, but I'm not doing it. So like, argue with them, not me. I probably do eat a little bit more meat than I used to, but really, if I were to eat a clean diet for me, it probably would be like brown rice, salmon, brown rice, ground beef, lots of eggs, right? Lots of fruit, some veggies. I like veggies. For all the talk about like defense chemicals and stuff, they don't really make me feel bad. Right? I know you can't always feel your health, but like a good salad, or like a good side salad of like some veggies on the side, I like those. Right, it's like it balances, even from a culinary standpoint, it kind of balances out, I feel like. And I'm like, oh, this is a nice crisp thing. And if I were to eat like a big steak every day, I don't know if I could. Right, I don't know if I could. And also, you're supposed to eat like the organs and stuff with that, right?
Yeah.
I'm not. I haven't reached that level of self-development. right? We're not even talking the controversial organs, but it's just like, heart, right? Like that's been around for a while. Like I'm like, and heart's probably the most normal one. I hear heart, it just kind of tastes like a chewier steak.
Yeah.
Have you had any of that?
I have had duck heart, I believe, and duck liver. Duck is very common in Denmark. We eat duck on Christmas and the days up to Christmas. And so people eat the duck heart and duck liver. That's really normal, actually. And it's honestly, the duck heart tastes just like meat, actually. A little bit chewy, but doesn't taste bad at all.
Cool. Oh, well, yeah, and I try to drink a little bit more water nowadays. I wish I had like some deep insight into like, this is the way I eat. This is the best way. But no, right now I just try to eat a balanced diet. I don't necessarily skew one way or the other. And that's what works for me. But I will say there are some times where, I wonder if I would thrive a little bit more with a better diet, right? And that's why, I only say that because I like to keep an open mind to optimization. Where in the future I might be like, maybe I should eat, some duck heart or duck liver, right? And then I was like, okay, well, we'll try that. We'll try that. It's like, it makes me feel good. I like things. The things I adopt long term would be research backed, but most importantly, it would have to be something that works for me. Like if it was something that worked for the 10,000, 100,000 people that they surveyed, but it's not working for me, I probably won't use it long term, right? And I don't want to contradict those findings, but it very well could be that there's some aspect of me that doesn't fit with that, even if I don't immediately identify it, right? So something that I'll use long term will not. It's really going to have to be self-evident in me. And I would also like to know the reason why, like why it's helping. Like, it's like, the omega-3s or something have it. So, yeah, that's how I'm eating right now.
But, okay, so what does working for you mean? Because does that mean you feel great right now, but might not live 20 years longer as you would if you ate something else, for example, or?
Now, that's kind of where research and I guess science, we'll get into it. And if something could be shown to add or subtract 20 years of someone's life, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. Okay. Like cigarettes aren't even supposed to do that. Right. It's like, right. I don't know. Like that's assuming you don't get cancer from it or something, which, but I don't smoke. That was something I would revisit. Working for me means that I would feel better with it. And what I'll say is I would question something that doesn't make you feel great, but makes you live longer.
Yeah, that's very true.
Right. That's like, that's one of those things where like, really? Right. Because if you think about like how someone's life eventually ends, there's some kind of disease or inflammation or something that eventually adds up to them, that can often be traced to some habit they were doing from often early on. And it was just like, it was always bad for them. They were always hammering it. But as they got older, their capacity to recover from that got a little bit less. So I think it does go hand in hand. To anyone who's listening, if something makes you feel great and you have energy and you're minus anything illicit or anything obvious, right? It's like, this drug made me feel great. Hampton said it's good for me. No, it's like, what I'm talking about, like the food wise, right? Something that's making you like have a little bit more energy, a little bit more creative. It often is better for longevity as well, I would say.
Yeah. Hampton, thank you so much for coming on again. This was a blast.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm really glad we linked up for the audience. It took a while, and Will is determined to get people on his podcast.
Lots of follow-ups.
I really wasn't mean. I do apologize once again. I don't mean to duck you, right? I don't mean to like. I'm trying to move away, but sometimes it's like it's like these couple weeks are packed, and it's like, then something happens, and this is happening. So I'm glad we linked up, and I'm glad we finally got to chat again. Yeah,
of course, man. No need to apologize. I know how things get, man. Where can people find your work?
Hybrid Calisthenics. Anywhere on social media. And it really, if you can just if you're not sure how to spell it, it's my fault, right? I chose the name. You can do your best to spell it on Google and it'll pop up. Or I believe if you search long-haired Asian fitness guy, it'll pop up. Maybe long-haired fitness guy. I'll be on the list, right? But definitely long-haired Asian fitness guy. There's only a few of them. Long-haired Asian calisthenics guy. Man, there's only a few of those.
Who else is there who has long hair and does calisthenics and is an Asian?
Well, I think there's definitely some, but I think I get compared looks-wise to Eugene. I think TEO. I haven't heard him pronounce his last name.
Your camera got lost, by the way.
Okay. It's because I'm Googling something.
Oh, okay.
Long-haired Asian calisthenics guy. Popularly known by the name Hybrid Calisthenics. Cool. So yeah, Google knows who you're searching.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Thanks, man.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you talking to me.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the podcast with Hybrid Calisthenics. If you enjoyed it and you want to see more, hit that subscribe button. It is absolutely free for you to do. It's almost effortless for you to do. It's literally, if you're on your phone, it's just a tap with your finger, which is pretty easy, I would say. If you're on your computer, it's just a click with the mouse button. It takes less than 3 seconds to do. It doesn't hurt. I've tried to subscribe to people before. It really doesn't hurt. All right. Thank you so much. And until next time, peace.